Okay, so I taught for 2 years. Taught math and science and history and Bible and ACT. So I taught for 2 years. And while I was teaching the first year, so let's talk about career for a second. And again, we're going to have different people share about their story. When I was teaching the first year, when I got that job, I was teaching 10th graders biology, the first class, okay? Let's just say that you grow up and you hear people say things like, oh, I'm glad it's Friday, so I'm glad I'm done. I don't have to work. I'm just excited to be done with my job, okay? For me, it was actually the reverse. Fridays were hard for me because I was like, I gotta wait till Monday to see these people. That's how excited I was to teach. I loved teaching so much, I actually didn't like Fridays because I wanted to keep teaching. Now, the way we're wired as people is that no matter, you can be in 3rd grade and know what you want to do with your life. It doesn't matter, some people are like, when I go to college, I'll figure it out. No, I knew that part of my life goal was to teach. The medical part was something else, was a distraction. I wanted to be a doctor to prove some points to people. And that didn't happen, and that's okay. But the teaching, though, when I started doing it, it's like you felt like, this is why I exist. Does that make sense? You're like, you're doing something you love. And most of those 10th graders, by the way, and some of them have relatives here, I'm sure, today, but some of those 10th graders, I still keep in touch with them. One of them is getting married in a few weeks. The one who went to England is one of those 10th graders. But the point, though, is that I taught for that first year. It was great. And the second year was good, too. But in the middle of my first year of teaching, as I was teaching mathematics and so on, and then the summer of 2012, I realized that there was a disconnect in American math education. I was teaching Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry, which would translate to 8th grade, 9th grade, and 10th grade math. Okay, I was teaching those 3 classes, but the students were in 3 different classes. And what happened was, I realized that the intersection was too much. So I was teaching the one in Algebra 1, I'm talking about graphing, and then I go to the geometry book and I'm like, so what's the next lesson in your geometry book? And it would say graphing. And I said, wait. I thought I'm teaching that kid graphing. Why am I teaching you graphing? Well, you think that's the only issue. Then I go teach the Algebra 2 kid and he's learning graphing. Now, it would be different if they were learning it from different levels, but they almost always start from y is equal to mx plus b. That's a problem. Why am I teaching you in Algebra 2, y is equal to mx plus b, when I taught it to you in Algebra 1? So what I did that summer is I took those 3 textbooks, I removed the labels, I said I don't care what the class title is, I want the concept. So I extracted the concept from the books, okay? And if you go on Facebook, and somebody was talking about pictures on Facebook, yeah, Facebook keeps those pictures, right? So I'm reminded, 5 years ago you were doing this. So if you go on Facebook and look at some of my pictures from 2012, you'll see me sitting in the living room with textbooks piled high. What I did was I acquired every textbook possible. Everywhere I went, I grabbed it. Every textbook possible. And hence why I tell people I'm probably the 30-year-old with the most books. But I probably had maybe 70 textbooks. And the idea was that I don't want to miss one topic. So I extracted every single topic from every single math book that I could acquire. Every topic. And I made it into one document, okay? The point was, if math is a roadmap, how about if we just write all the things we need to learn, and then if somebody shows up and says, hey, Amos, I hated school when I was young. I want to learn math and I want to do calculus. And then I tell them, well, here you go. If you finish this concept, you will be ready for calculus. And so that was what I was doing. So when I went into my second year of teaching, I had been doing this project. So my life was like, in a sense, I had so much going on where I was doing this math project and I was trying to teach full time. And then we found out we were expecting our second child. And at that point, I was like, okay, I probably need to pause. And so I took a risk and I said, I'm not going to teach. Not because I had a job, but I just said, because I can't teach right now. 1, because I wanted to fix the American math education system. That was my goal. And so I spoke at the Wisconsin Math Council, the Minnesota Math Council, spoke to the people in charge of mathematics in Minnesota. It was a lot of talking here and there. One of the places I spoke, though, they should have paid for my gas at least. I had to drive 5 hours and I had to pay. But you know what? I enjoyed it. So I did it. But I talked with a lot of people. A lot of people hear it and they say, you're right. That makes a lot of sense. But it's like, where do we begin? And it's hard to begin somewhere. So my solution to that is to actually just have a math academy, and hence why part of why life exists, that existed in the beginning, was to teach life skills. The name of the business is the Learning Institute for Excellence, but it was also to teach math with those tools that I made. So those tools actually became a book called Tools for Mastering Mathematics, and I co-wrote it with a guy from who just got his master's from UMD called Nathan Jersek. But the point I'm trying to make, though, is that I stopped teaching because I felt there was a bigger need that needed to be met. So that was how I left that track in 2013. Started tutoring. I used to help kids with math and science, but that wasn't my fundamental goal. The reason I started life is actually to do what we're doing from 9 to 12 on Saturdays. That was why I started life in the beginning. But I never had a chance to do it. Why? Because most kids, when they came with their homework, they didn't want to sit there and listen to you tell them about, hey, let's talk about finance and budgeting. Kids are like, hey, I need to get my homework done. Number 1 to 5, help. Okay, so you help the kid, you look at the time up, see you later. So I never actually had the chance to teach the life skills, which was the reason the company was even called Life, which is, strange. But now, by God's grace, I have the opportunity to do that on Saturday morning, to talk about all the things I wanted to talk about, but that I couldn't talk about because people were consumed with getting their homework done. I want to end with one more thing, and then we'll be done with this. Some of you are like, oh, when he said math, I didn't want to hear anymore. I know some of you have nightmares with math. But here's the reality. Maybe not you, but I've met some people that I talk to them and we're talking, and then I say math, and then they're like, okay, I'm done. You lost me. It's like, no, math is beautiful. Yeah, maybe you had a bad encounter with it, but math is beautiful. But here's what was interesting, right? So I'm teaching Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry. I merge all those into one class. I start using some of those resources. They work for a lot of students. And I've tried many times. Let's try doing life skills class. Let's try this, let's try that. And a lot of times those didn't work. Because the child is coming with homework on graphing, which he came with the year before. So he's doing the same problem. Now, some of you have told people this and they're like, no, Amos, it can't really be like that. And you know what I do? I say, well, have a seat. And I pull out all the textbooks and I pull out the table of contents and I say, look at it. And most people look at it and go, yeah, there's a problem. And we have the summer break, 3 months, right? So if I can give a quick plug, the greatest mistake you can make is to take 3 months off from something that requires analytical, logical functioning. 3 months off. Tell LeBron James and these guys to take 3 months off from playing basketball, right? I just pick LeBron because most people say he's a good player. But tell them to take 3 months off. Most of them won't do that. And so we take 3 months off from something that requires practice. When we come back, we review for 3 months. We're wasting people's time. So what I did, this project actually led to something which on Thursday I had a chance to give it to someone who owns a school and he's going to investigate. Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, and Pre-Calculus are 4 math courses that are spread across for American math students, okay? That's 4 years of math. I found out that if a student is committed and diligent and is willing to face the sacrifice, in 270 days, they will actually do those 4 math courses. 270 days. Using the college math textbook by Larson and Hotstetzler, which is used at UWS and all over, using the actual college textbooks, using the geometry textbook, you do all the math. But guess what I did? Again, extract the repetition and leave it as a story. 270 days. That's all you need. 1 year and you're done with 4 years of math. Why does Amos want you to be done with 4 years of math in 1 year? So you can talk about life. That's the point. Because we can't talk about life now because we're stuck in a cycle. We're stuck with busy work. And again, these things I'm sharing, many people agree. I went to the college professors. Let's talk about their perspective. 50% of students in certain universities in the University of Wisconsin system, I attended a conference for this, 50% in college have to actually take Algebra 1 again. I don't want to list the name of the school now, but it is the southern Wisconsin. 50% of schools, 50% of students are repeating Algebra 1 and 2 in college. So reason with me for a second and see why my passion pulled me out even though I didn't have a job. So we're doing this busy work in 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. You get to college and then we put you back in 7th grade math. That doesn't make sense. Now those students are paying for that, by the way. It's not free. They're paying to take Algebra 1 in college. So we have a problem definitely, and I thought let's try and solve it. And so I had a community college that paid for my time to just help with the project, and so that was what ended up helping some, if I would not have had food. But so I did that, and then of course, as I said, I started tutoring people, one by one, and then you had all these students. So the math project is still something that is cooking somewhere, because if we can help kids learn effectively and efficiently, we can actually, for example, I walk into the classroom. Hello everybody, how you doing? Okay, this is our concept. We do it, you get it. We have 10 minutes left. How about we talk about the effects of technology on your brain? Sure, and everybody talks. My point is we have time to actually talk. Right now, most teachers don't have time to talk about life. They're stuck to this. And I've found that it's freeing to realize if you remove the repetition, you will have time and you can help people learn how to live life. Because there's so many things young people need to learn about life I wish I learned about finance before I stepped foot at the university. I wish I knew about budgeting before I ever went to college, right? Because there are some things that I fell for. Again, it's my fault. I'm not going to put the blame on anybody else. But there's some things that I could have done better. But it is what it is. And today's not a morning party. But my point is, I was hoping, and that's why I say I encourage students, if you can come on Saturday and you can talk about these things, do it now so that you don't become like us, some of us that made some big mistakes. And I mean, finance is just one of them. And I told them in the car how I used to order Chinese food all the time, and I guess that's part of the problem in that finance, right? I needed to learn to cook instead I was just ordering. And so it's important that we learn how to tackle life as best as we can before we move on to the next stage. So some of you are in college, some of you are not in college, doesn't matter. It's all about how can I use the tools that I've been blessed with, right? All the tools, and the Bible gives us instructions on how to live. And yet, young people, myself included, we got in trouble. So I left doing the teaching, and then I did the tutoring for a few years. And in 2014, a friend of mine needed help in medical physics, and that was how I got into medical physics. And medical physics is the branch of physics that specializes on the safe use of sound waves, magnetic waves, magnets, sound waves, and X-rays. If you use any of those things, then somebody who is typically called either a medical physicist or medical physicist assistant has to check each of those things every year or every other year. Every year. They just have to. They don't fix it. Medical physicists don't fix things typically. That's not their primary job. They just show up, they put a meter. In most of the cases, they measure, they take measurements, they look at the patterns that need to be met, and then they go the next year. So that's what I was doing up north when I told you where I was yesterday. So the point is, I left teaching, I went into tutoring, I did the medical physics, and I still work in medical physics, but it's a job that gives me an opportunity to do some other things that I love to do. So that again is interesting for you guys, because you guys are going to graduate college or maybe later on in life, and you're going to think, well, I got my degree in this. I want to do this because I got my degree in this. And you realize many people don't do that necessarily. Some people get a degree in this and don't do anything with it, right? I know a guy who was an aviation mechanic. And recently I asked, so what are you up to? Oh, I work on proton therapy machines at the Mayo Hospital. I'm like, wait, that doesn't make sense. Proton therapy and airplanes, those two don't go together. But that's what he does. So my point is, don't take that as a huge disappointment in life if you don't end up doing what you went to school for. But make sure that you have some idea of why you're studying what you're studying, and not just doing it because everybody went to college or everybody's doing this. Everybody's a math major. Maybe I should be. Everybody's a chemistry major. I should be. Chemistry is cool, by the way. But anyways, now somebody might even wonder, Amos, your degree was in chemistry and philosophy, and you've talked a lot about math. Where does that fit into anything? Well, when I was in 3rd grade, I remember asking my brothers and my siblings, I wanted paper. When I was 5 or 6, I always wanted paper. And I almost have a sense in me that I might become a billionaire because of paper someday. Just because I like paper. And so I'll sell paper, anyways, a stationery store. We'll talk about that later. But the billionaire, so you give it away. But I like paper. And when I was 5, if you gave me paper, oh boy, it was just great. And if you give me a pen, oh, you just made my day. Paper and pen, that's what I wanted. So in 3rd grade, if I remember clearly, I remember asking my brother, and I remember the story because my brother said to me, I was writing these math problems, trying to write examples for students, and I remember my brother saying to me, stop using the word answer, use the word solution. I still remember that. And so I said, okay, sure, no problem. So the idea was I was trying to write a math book of examples that had an example and solutions. It was about 3rd or 4th grade. And that was something I did. I just liked to do it. And so when this happened in 2012, you see what I'm getting at? This was a lifelong passion of mine. So yes, I didn't get a degree in math. I did take calculus 1 and 2, and unfortunately I couldn't take out 3 because of biochemistry, which was a conflict in my schedule, and I was a chemistry major, so I couldn't just take it for fun, which was the goal. And so you have to learn it on your own, thanks to YouTube, Google, and so on. But my point is, I loved doing that even when I was in 3rd grade. See, when God makes us, He gives us something in us that is in us for a long time. That's why I'm concerned about the American attitude to careers. They tell the kid, oh, you'll figure it out. Just go to college. You'll figure it out. No. What you need to understand is their DNA and their makeup has certain traits that tell you what they might want to be in life. As young as 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So what you need to do is to actually pause, reflect hard. And you can figure out what you want to do. And at least you start somewhere. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you can't change direction. I know a guy who was a lawyer, okay? He was a lawyer, and all of a sudden, I met him one day, and he was holding, like, anatomy books. What do you do with anatomy? You know what? I've done law for a while. I want to be a physician assistant. Like, wait, lawyer to physician assistant. That doesn't connect. That was his lifelong dream. And so this man I'm talking about, which his wife was hoping that she could make it or they could make it, but they're out of town. But this man ends up pursuing his lifelong dream, and now he's moving into his rotations or his whatever. Like, he's actually he's doing it. He didn't just say it, he's actually doing it. Your life is not dependent on your career. Your career, if you do the math, calculate how many hours you work for your whole lifetime, do the math and calculate it as a ratio to a life that is about 70 years old. You will realize that your career life is actually very little compared to your whole life. Why am I saying this? Because it's not about just a career. Now, definitely whatever you're doing, by God's grace, I hope you enjoy it. That's my hope. I don't want you to be like people who don't want to get out of bed. Oh boy, I got to go to work. I don't want you to be that way. I want you to enjoy what you're doing. However, realize that your identity should not be in your career, because your life is bigger than your career. Because some people's careers, if they were just to stick with their careers, it would be a sad life. What's your job? I dig all day. You know, and is that person going to brag? And I'm not saying digging is not important. It's very important. But are they going to brag, I dig, I'm a big deal? It's like, no, they won't do that. Some other people say things like, well, I do this, so my job is a big deal. Okay, whatever. It doesn't matter. We need people who dig. We need people who nail things. We need people who help children. We need people who treat brains. We need all of these people. And unfortunately, some of my upbringing, we used to rank people by certain careers. So when you say a career, we say, yeah, that's all right. You know, and that's bad. And it's not right. Think about, some people are like, well, we're going to rank this job or that job. Wait till the day you actually meet a person that has that job. That's when you're like, well, I just hope I can find one, whatever. Fill in the gap. So we need everybody, right? For the most part. There's some professions that we can argue. But let's not go there. But generally, we need everyone to put in their share. So God has given you gifts and talents. Some of them will transfer to your careers, and some of them will not. I could not see myself telling my dad, hey, good afternoon, Daddy. I want to study mathematics. Now, some people can do that. That's fine. I couldn't do that then because I came to the U.S. I was pre-med, going to be a doctor, and now I'm going to tell him I want to be a mathematician. That just didn't sit well. So I had to stick with pre-med, and I graduated in pre-med chemistry. But my point is, that didn't mean that the math dream had to die. Don't let things die just because they don't fit into your career. Some people have to go to work 8 to 4. When they go home, they allow their passions to grow. My father-in-law would build cabinets and build bookshelves and do all of that, but he had a job, a regular job, but he still had a passion, and he kept to that. So please, don't let that passion die. And number 2, don't make your career your identity. That's not our primary identity. 2 Corinthians 5 talks about our primary identity. So if you become whatever you become an ambassador for Christ. If I become a doctor, I'm an ambassador for Christ as a doctor. You're an ambassador. Your identity is not your job. Because what happens when you have an injury that removes you from your job? I want to tell you a true story, and then I'll stop and then transition to our topic for today. A few months ago, I used to see somebody walking up and down the street right here. And I didn't know where they were from. I didn't know what they were about. But I saw them every day. And I wondered, what's your story? You look like you're from, maybe from Africa. Sometimes you can tell. But it's like, you look like you're from Africa. There's an African community. Are you plugged in? Do you know anybody? They would walk in and every day and so on and so forth. And one day, and they walked at a certain pace that, sometimes the bus comes right here and then it leaves. So I realized there was a day, I think it was one of the first times, the bus was possibly going to leave or whatever. So I ran out. This is not a story about, oh, that was nice. No, that's not the point. But I ran out, told the bus, she's coming. So she comes. I said, hi, this is my name. This is who I am, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, I want to meet with you and my wife, and we just want to find out your story. So she comes in and we're talking. It is the most unbelievable story in the universe. One of the most unbelievable, okay, on human terms. You live here. You're from West Africa. You live here. You went to school in Iowa. How did you end up here? Well, they have a PhD in mathematics. You're watching this person come every day. No idea what their story is. And unfortunately, they had a stroke. And that was the end of the game. They were trained. They were going to be, and they were in their office one day, and they had a stroke. And I hear that story, and some people say, well, yeah, can you verify the fact? It's like, well, actually, what happened? Something else happened, and it's like, yeah, they were in the newspaper. They have a PhD, and they had a stroke, and they were sharing, well, they had a stroke later on, but they were in the newspaper before they had the stroke. And I'm just thinking to myself, you have a PhD in math. You came from from overseas, you trained here, everything, and all of a sudden, your life changes course in a second. Changes course forever. Now they've recovered. By God's grace, they're doing better. I'm hoping, we're praying that there's complete turnaround, but they needed to go through a lot of things, and they're still not back where they need to be. And so they've decided now they're going to start a whole new career in, I think, biomedical something, or chemistry. They're just going to start from scratch. And so that's where they're at now. They have to relearn a lot of things and then go from there. The point of the story is, number one, every good and perfect gift comes from above. Let's be careful not to think that the reason why we have the talents we have is because of us. And let's make sure that we use those talents for the reasons for which they are supposed to be used. Because, my friends, it's a matter of seconds. And I can tell you story after story. I know another engineer who had a car accident, and that was the end. But if their identity was in their profession primarily, they wouldn't want to live life anymore. Right? Life is just like, why am I alive if I can't do those things I used to do? But they're still living life. And unfortunately, the second person, some of them live, some of them have different experiences, some of them recover. But the reality is that I thank God that my identity doesn't have to be in just my doing a job. It's in beyond that. And this is not to belittle any job. You do your job well, but you don't allow that. I mean, I know people when they want to say their name, oh, what's your name? Are you Mr. Jones? Oh, no. I'm Dr. Jones. I'm Engineer Dr. Jones, Okay, nice to meet you, Engineer Dr. Jones. Oh, no, it's Engineer Dr. Okay, nice to meet you. And I know people who do that, They want to keep the title. It's like, the titles, it's all, it's all said and done. It doesn't matter. The question is, are you serving people with what God has given you? Are you using all the gifts and talents that God has given you? Are you seeking out those talents, or are you sitting there saying, I don't have anything? That's a problem. Everybody here has something. So I studied medical physics, and this is just a wrap up that story. The medical physics didn't fit into my life vision, but there was a life need to feed a family. That's another reason why you might have to make a change in life sometimes. It's like, man, Amos, I just want to be a photographer. I have 7 kids, but I just want to be a photographer. It's like, dude, you might not make enough being a photographer. Go get a job doing something else to feed your family, okay? But that's my passion, Amos. I just want to take pictures. Okay, but are you going to feed your family? Do you see what I'm saying? So for me, there were certain things I had to do. And that was one of the things I did, was to take on a job that gave me the opportunity. But then I came to like the job, and you enjoy it. And sometimes when you travel, you get to listen to books. I almost listened to a lot of Ezekiel, which, again, powerful book. But the point is that your job, hopefully, even if it doesn't tie to your passion, your primary passion. Because what's my primary passion? Will more be teaching, right? That's a primary passion. But I have other passions, and one of them is learning things. I like to learn new things. And so physics lets you do that. So, put your identity in the right place. Use everything it's giving you. I started that in 2014, December. I've been doing that ever since. I am actually in a master's program in medical physics so that I can transition more into medical physics as far as some of the overseeing other people or whatever. But I don't have to. It doesn't conflict with my passion of teaching. So that's why I do that. And the Learning Institute itself is still going, mostly in Superior now, but that's also ongoing. So that's kind of the story of my life, of how I came to where I am in terms of my career changes, in terms of all those things. So anyways, and I should probably use a different word. I heard that people shouldn't, how the slang young people use these days. I heard that dude is not a good word, so I'm changing my vocabulary. So anyways, so that's how I ended up where I am today. However, in the process, I've done some writings, and today, the main thing we were going to discuss today is about one of those writings. And I've written Why Do I Exist, which is about living a life that makes sense. A few days ago on the news, they were talking about the fact that the Federal Drug Administration has issued a warning to electronic cigarette companies to find a way to reduce the amount of electronic cigarettes young people are getting, and to find a way to stop underage people from getting it. It's rare where you see such you must do something now. but it has become an epidemic. And one of the things I want to say, and then we'll take our 5-minute break, is why would you leave? Why would you want to go out and experiment on things that don't necessarily help you grow? Well, part of the problem a lot of young people have today, and I don't say this lightly, I've worked with, 200 of them or whatever, is that a lot of them don't know why they exist or don't know what the point is, and so they end up just trying out things. And now the government is crying. I go to all these cities that I visit sometimes. The drug epidemic is unbelievable, right? It's just very sad. We have drugs, we have the electronic cigarette problem, we have all these things. But here's the reality. If you and I were created, we have a purpose. Therefore, we will try to not let things hinder us from accomplishing or living out the purpose for which we were made. But if you remove the basis of life and tell people that they were not created, that will cause some problems. As the philosophers say, that has some metaphysical implications. I like that word. Whether or not it ties into what I'm saying, I like it. Metaphysical implications. What it means is that the philosophy itself is not just, oh, we're just teaching this and it's not going to affect anything else. No, it will affect other things. If you're sitting here and I'm telling you your life came by chance and you don't have any purpose, well, then you just try out random things. I can't talk to someone in detail who wants to do that, but the one who says, I am a Christian, or I believe, I look at that one and I say, what are you doing with your life? You say you believe in creation. Are you living consistent with that? So, anyways, the news, I don't know what the people are going to do, but that was in the news this week. They're trying to deal with all these epidemics. The CDC came out with its own epidemic, of the suicide epidemic. All these people are coming out with all these epidemics, and you ask yourself, what is our solution? It goes back to faith. It goes back to faith in Jesus. It goes back to life that is found in him. Now, somebody might say, well, I don't believe this, that, and the other. Well, go back and study that. And I find it interesting that there's a Canadian professor who is not a Christian, who is actually reading the Bible and saying, it's where I find the direction for life. He's not a Christian. And he's actually fighting against the people that are teaching some of the things that are causing young people to lose their minds. He's not even a Christian. And I'm thinking, well, the Christians better get things in order and begin to make an impact in encouraging people to live lives of purpose. Don't be afraid to use the word purpose, because there's an objective basis to use it. Purpose comes from intentionality in design. If there's no intentionality in design, there's no objective purpose. Because there's intentionality in design, there is purpose. But some people use the word purpose and remove design and intentionality. That's a contradiction. You actually live in a contradictory life when you live a life of purpose that doesn't have a basis to live a life of purpose. But when you have a basis in creation, then you live a life of purpose, because things that are made have a purpose. Granted, some cars, I wonder if they have purpose. It's like, really, what's the purpose of that? You know, some cars are $300,000 and they can only seat 2 people. What's the purpose of that? You could buy a house. So my point is, that can get a little tricky, right? In terms of what is purpose and how does that fit. And so I just used the car example. So we will pick it up from purpose and technology and how we shouldn't lose our minds when we come back from the break.